Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 32 in the book of John. We are in the story of the Samaritan woman, and today's going to be about the 25-cent slots of sharing, the 25-cent slot machines of sharing. So we're in this long theoretical discussion between Jesus and the woman at the well about relationship with God. And she says, kind of theoretically near the end, I know Messiah, the anointed one, is coming. And when he does, I'll get in the right relationship. That means that I'll worship him because it's an accurate interaction with God. And then Jesus drops the bombshell on her, which is that I am he. I am the one that you've been waiting for. I am the Messiah. And he basically says, you have to worship me. I'm the right object of worship. And she kind of plops it back in her lap and said, will you worship? Let's see how this turns out. So the point from yesterday is there's no right relationship with God that does not involve worshiping. If you're not worshiping, you're not right with God. There's no right relationship with God that doesn't involve true worship of Jesus specifically. Acts 4:12 says there's salvation in no one else. There's no other name under heaven among men by which we must be saved. So, will you start to have a right relationship is what Jesus asks this woman. So let's pick up the story in John chapter 4, verse 26. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. Then the disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, what do you seek? Or why are you talking with her? So the woman left her water jug and went away to town and said to the people, come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? They went out of the town and were coming to him. Then Jesus pauses for a second and turns and teaches to the disciples. I'm going to skip that part for today. And then verse 37, just at the end of his little teaching time. For here the saying holds true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you did not labor. Others have labored and you have entered into their labor. All right, so this story is told that the panic of her faith, that is leaving her water jar, because water is life in that society, and water jars are the lifeline for that life, and water jars are important and they're valuable. So perhaps leaving her water jar tells us that she is undone. And she goes to her brethren Samaritans and she invites them and she says, come. She confesses what Jesus did for her. Uh, and then she leaves them with a question. Could this be the Christ? So just a word about the disciples now. So the 12 guys went to the Piggly Wiggly. They went on a literal supply mission. They come back and they see that this woman who has come to get liquid gets this offer from the Lord. And they're going to see evangelism in her before they ever do their own evangelism. So Jesus tells them in the part that I'll get to tomorrow, the mission fields are white for harvest. In other words, people are fruit ready and they're going to see this example of a fruit ready person. Okay, so she goes to her people and she says, come. She confesses her previous sin and then she leaves them with a question. So she goes to share what he told her, which was, you've slept with too many guys. She goes to share her question. Can this be the Christ? And then she enters into the labor, the previous work of others. Well, who are the others that the other Samaritans know about? Well, they know about Jacob. They know about Joseph. They know about Cain and Abel and Eve and Hagar. And in a sense, their own mothers and fathers who have they enter into the labor of help making an understanding of a loving God possible. So she, the Samaritan woman, goes on an evangelism mission, and she stands on the shoulders of giants who stand on the giant shoulders of God. You have entered into their labor. So when a person speaks about Christ, remember, it's not anyone's first spiritual day. So if you have ever shared the gospel, know this, that it is not their first spiritual day. If you've ever met someone in a spiritual moment, know this, it's not their first spiritual day. So here's how she witnesses. She adds her 2 cents. So here's the analogy that came to me is the slot machine. It's like if you show up to Las Vegas and you take a 25-cent quarter out of your pocket and you throw it in the first slot machine you see, and you hit the jackpot and you get, millions or whatever. So it's similarly, you weren't the first one to put quarters in that slot machine. It just, you were the one that finally put them over. So the people there, the Samaritan people, were waiting. They were waiting for her 25 cents of testimony. So verse 39 is where I'm going to skip down to. So many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. And here's her testimony that they believe in. He told me all that I ever did. Now, this is fascinating to me because we're back to how, for her, revelation about her sexual history opened a door to spiritual conversation and spiritual truth, and most specifically, a spiritual person of the Lord. And in a sense, she was saved through the conduit of her sexual sinfulness. And similarly now, sharing her sexual story opens the door for her neighbors. So they all know the story that she was disobeying the truth about marriage and who you should be sleeping with. They did not know how Jesus met her there in her agreement of it. So that's, I think, the witness for the people. So go first to your own people. Go with your own testimony. So she says, hey, this hit me. This truth he gave me, his mercy, his rescue, his forgiveness. So it's so interesting that her sexual history opens a door for her and then for others. So maybe you, dear listener, have the worst sexual history in the world, or maybe the worst sexual history of today. And maybe the Lord can use your bad story, your unrighteousness, your sinfulness, or other categories, greed or selfishness or whatever, and maybe he could be Messiah over that. Maybe he could be king and priest over that area, in this case, the zipper. So it's her agreeing with his assessment of sin. Her agreeing with the penalty is that it is due, and her agreement that the penalty has been paid. So maybe this woman, by adding her 25 cents of witness to the Samaritan people, is enough. And maybe now her adding it to you is enough. Maybe her adding her labor to all the spiritual days that you have had until now. Maybe entering into her spiritual labor isn't enough. So my question for you is it enough for you? I hope so. Thanks for listening. Come back tomorrow.